Good afternoon, folks. We're ready to get started. I don't think I need to ask, can everybody hear me? Seems like it's got good volume. Well, good afternoon. My name is Rob Bonta. I'm honored to be one of the chairs, along with my colleague, Assemblymember Reggie Jones-Sawyer, of the Select Committee on the Status of Boys and Men of Color. And just as Chair Jones-Sawyer and I have the backs of all of our boys and men of color throughout the state, I have his back as he is dealing with some travel challenges. He's coming back from the East Coast, as I did earlier this morning, and he had some inclement weather, so he's on his way, but he wasn't able to make it quite yet, so I'm going to be leading until he gets in. And we have an exciting hearing today. We like to bring our hearings out into different parts of the state where we can showcase the amazing work that's being done by our great leaders throughout the state, and we have some of those amazing leaders on the different panels today to talk about our issue, which is of this hearing, which is the education system addressing the needs of boys and men of color in California. So a critical discussion, and I'm looking forward to hearing from our panelists and our leaders. You know, as I was preparing for this hearing, I thought of an old quotation from Malcolm X, which was, education is our passport for the future. And we want to make sure that all our California children, and certainly all of our boys and men of color, have a passport for the future that will take them anywhere that they wish, and that they are all able to fulfill their full potential and achieve their hopes and dreams for themselves and for their families. So we're going to be talking today about a number of different issues. Two that I just want to highlight that are important to me, and I'll ask the panelists to address them if they're consistent with their remarks and some of the work that they've been doing. And it's an opportunity for me to talk a little bit about what we're doing in Oakland. The Oakland Unified School District has taken on the issue of school environment and classroom environment, and has banned willful defiance as a disciplinary standard and as a reason for suspension or for discipline or expulsion. So would love to hear from others about any data on that or more widespread nature of that step being taken elsewhere. Also, in particular for our API boys and men of color, I think it's important that we have the data at our fingertips that's necessary to provide the solutions that we need. And one way to get that is through disaggregating our data. That's something that's personally important to me as the first and only Filipino state legislator in the history of California, and as a part of a larger API community that is very diverse with a lot of different experiences. We think no community should be concealed, and no experiences should be rendered invisible, and through disaggregated data those experiences can come forward, and we can have knowledge about them and look at different outcomes, and then measures that we can take to move those outcomes in the way that we think is best for our boys and men of color. So would like to hear more about that. Again, OUSD Oakland has taken some steps to collect disaggregated data, so it's very exciting. But there's a whole host of issues that we're going to be talking about today. I look forward to hearing about all of them, and we're incredibly fortunate today to have with us our California Superintendent of Public Instruction, who is here with us in person to talk about the work being done, and he's going to kick us off this afternoon with some remarks on addressing the achievement gap. Please give a warm welcome to Tom Torlakson.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you. Well, thank you, Assemblymember Bonta, and we really appreciate your leadership and that of Reggie Jones-Sawyer, your great Assemblyman partner in this effort, and the whole caucus, the whole team that you have as part of your committee. And I want to say at the outset that I've read your issues paper, your goals for this year, and I strongly and totally support the direction you're headed, the issues you're focusing on, and I'm here today to report some progress, but also outline the heavy lifting, the big work that's in front of us to meet the goals that you lay out for the boys and men of color, and what we need to do as a state to thrive and have all of our students reach their fullest potential. Some of you may know, for a few days this week, I was acting governor of California. I did a number of important things. One was declare an emergency for the fires at Sand and in Monterey County, and go out to the front line in Santa Clarita and talk to the firefighters and thank them for their work, their bravery, their skill, and to release millions of dollars of aid to help them. almost on an equal level, I also declared Tuesday as Change Lives, Be a Teacher Day in California. And we got a lot of feedback on that, and I'll talk a little bit more about the issues surrounding the teacher shortage and the lack of diversity we have in the current teacher workforce, and some pathways on how we might address that. So I wanted to share that with you, that was a very big top in my mind, is how can we address the teacher shortage in a way where we can reflect the community, the students that we're teaching, and connect to the families, the parents of those youngsters. So I want to say that we are making progress. We're addressing this issue head on. California is making progress, but we need to do more, we need to do it better, and we need to do it faster. Two reports, just to mention a couple of many reports that are out there, but Education Trust West did the excellent report, Black Minds Matter, which focuses rightly on the enormous work in front of us. And Californians Together and CABE produced a report on how English learner goals are being met in 29 districts or not met in 29 districts, and how their LCAPs were not as strong as they should be. Again, much work to be done here. At the California Department of Education, I help oversee the education of 6.2 million students in 10,000 schools. My department is dedicated to that mission. We are going about implementing some of the recommendations of these two reports, as well as other research and other reports that have been done, pointing out where we're short of where we need to be. As you know, the local control funding formula, through that we've increased funding, particularly for the neediest students, and we have increased local control. We've focused on equity, working with stakeholders to ensure high quality education for all students. We're working with the Black Legislative Caucus, the Latino Legislative Caucus, and the API Caucus to create an educational equity office in my department, a team that will be dedicated to closing the achievement gap and doing everything possible to put a spotlight on that and on the best strategies for tackling that challenge. Good news, among all the students who started high school, this is on the graduation front, started high school in 2011, 82.3% graduated with their class in 2015. This is up 1.3 percentage points from last year, but it's up about 9 points from 5 years ago. So we were around 74%, we're moving up to 82%. That means that we have nearly 3,000 more students receiving their high school diplomas last year, and of course being more ready for college and career. The state's graduation rate, again, continues to climb, but this past year, and good news, this past year there was an increase for African American students of 2.6 percentage points, double the statewide rate of increase. So that's a promising sign. For Latino students, the graduation reached 78.5%, up about 2% from the year before. But we asked the question, I asked the question, is that good enough? The numbers clearly are not where we want to be or where we should be as California. We've also focused on suspensions and expulsions, and I'll talk about absenteeism, but if you're not there in the classroom, you can have the most excellent teachers, the most excellent equipment, the most excellent curriculum, but if you're not there as a student, you're not able to connect and you're not able to stay up with your learning. So we've reduced suspensions and expulsions by really focusing and creating a team effort to tackle that. So there's been a steady decline over the last 4 years, 5 years. 5 years ago, my department of California Department of Education began collecting data on suspension expulsion rates and showed numbers were very, very high, particularly for African American students. My department, the Student Support and Special Services branch of that department, reached out to education stakeholders, academic experts, and others to find ways to help students stay in class, in school suspension, counseling services, and a number of other strategies to help them stay in school and resolve issues that may have led to them being suspended or expelled. Thanks to the California Endowment, I want to say thanks publicly to them for their leadership role, and thanks to the legislature for Assemblymember Jones-Sawyer, and for you, Rob Bonta, for passing AB 420 by Assemblyman Dickinson that made these goals more possible to attain in dealing with willful defiance. The highest percentage, by the way, of declines came under the willful defiance category. Over the last 5 years, because of this teamwork and this focus, expulsions have dropped 40% and suspensions have dropped 35%. Those students instead are in school getting help and getting caught up. What else are we doing? A web-based toolkit offers strategies to implement positive behavior intervention, ways to understand and correct disruptive behavior. And we're helping educators to implement restorative justice strategies in promoting respect, taking responsibility, and strengthening relationships. Thank you again, Rob Bonta. Thank you again, the legislature. Thank you to the governor. For this year in the budget, they put in $18 million for more restorative justice strategies and expansion of these effective programs. So these are good results, but I would keep underscoring we need to do more. The California Department of Education announced earlier this year that California will begin its first statewide collection of data on students who are chronically absent, a key factor in academic trouble. The change is the result of the new federal Every Student Succeeds Act signed by President Obama last December. CDE has wanted to collect this data for years. Now we can, and we can learn more about what works to reduce chronic absenteeism with that data. I also want to thank the legislature for something that we care about, that my department's focused on, that I've focused on, is college readiness. So $200 million has been put forward. My department will be allocating the money out to the districts of the state of California. Again, I say this was really important that we're focusing a number of programs we know work already. We can amplify and we can replicate and expand those programs. Puente, Mesa, Gear Up, the academic preparation programs, AVID, where students and parents can focus on the real possibilities of getting to college and believing you can do it and believing you can get the finances to do that. Again, I mentioned as acting governor this week, I underscored the importance of the teaching profession. I say, let's end the blame game and the finger pointing. Let's extol the virtues of being an educator and being a contributor to the bright future of our students. For these efforts, improving graduation rates that we're talking about, reducing suspensions, increasing equity, we need more great teachers. Thank you again for including $35 million in the budget. I'm doing a lot of thanks because they're really stepping out front where they need to be to help us address these issues. So that $35 million is going to be budgeted for teacher training and recruitment programs. I strongly support several bills in the legislature. We are so short, just to give you an example, last year we needed 22,000 new credentials, but we only produced 15,000. We were 7,000 short. One way we can increase the number of teaching candidates and diversity of those teachers in California is to promote high school career pathways. There is a 3-year curriculum, a 3-year career pathways. I visited 2 of those this last year. One I saw firsthand in Arroyo Valley High School in San Bernardino City District, and the other Liberty Union High School District in Contra Costa County. We can get students started on an accelerated pathway to teacher training, and guess what? They get excited, they work with kids in middle school, the high school students go to the middle schools and elementary schools. They become enthused about helping students and helping them succeed. And guess what? When they get their credentials, and a large portion of them go and get their credentials, they come back. They come back to their neighborhood, they come back to their families, they come back to a community they know, and they reflect the ethnic diversity of that community. So I'm very big on supporting that program. The other one we're doing is looking at a number of areas have already done this, to be able to earn your teaching credential while you're going through getting your baccalaureate degree, while you're getting your BS or your BA degree, so you can get both when in a 4-year, 5-year time horizon, mostly in 4 years. We want to help our students from our communities. We want our students from our communities to learn how rewarding it is to be a teacher, and most of those students return again to the community and serve as role models themselves. Speaking of CTE, career pathways, thanks to the legislature, $1.4 billion has been invested, and we're finding the graduation rate for students in these programs is 95 to 96 to 97%. That they're enthused, it's learning with a purpose, it's hands-on, it's connected to the real world. Finally, at CDE, we also need to provide more resources for school districts as we confront the pernicious and persistent achievement gap. I'm proposing a new CDE equity team for this sole purpose. We can direct some department resources we currently have towards this, but I need your help, the legislature's help, and the governor's help to get some new and additional positions to be approved to help us do this work statewide, again, across 10,000 schools. So I've been working with the leadership and staff of the caucuses that I mentioned earlier towards this. Good news, we're going up from $7,000 per pupil to $10,600 per pupil in spending. That's a huge increase in the last 5 years from the dreary years of the recession. That is important, but is it enough? Is it enough? Students, I think, deserve more. We're still now 42nd in the nation in per pupil spending, just to give a comparison. 42nd in the nation out of 50 states. That's not where California should be. New York, we did a survey when California was at $8,000 per pupil. New York and New Jersey were double that, over double that at $20,000 per pupil. Vermont and Wyoming were double California at $16,000 per pupil, and Montana was right there with us at $8,000 per pupil. Again, I ask the question, is that where California should be? And I say not. So this is why I'm so strongly supporting Prop 55, the continuation of Prop 30. It will bring in $8 billion a year, so many of these great programs we just named and that you're working on, Assembly Member, depend on resources and funding. If we lose this, it will be a disaster for the goals that we've been setting out and the programs we've been rebuilding. So I'm strongly supporting that measure, $8 billion a year, and also Prop 51, the facilities measure, so we can upgrade the facilities in our classrooms to have world-class learning environments. And so I say Californians are ready to say yes to invest. In the last election in June, there were 38 measures passed by voters. 86% of local investment opportunities to fund schools passed. 86% representing $5 billion of new investment in education. So I think the voters are understanding the progress we're making. It's not fast enough, it's not far enough, but we need to focus. I just want to share that as I conclude, this morning I was down here for the fire. Yesterday I flew back in Sacramento. I was with 13,000 teachers via conference. 300 of them were in the same room. They were taking time out of their summer to learn how to be better teachers and get the best strategies and best practices. And I concluded my remarks there, and I'll do that with you now, just to say I am positive, I'm optimistic. I said with our high hopes and our high expectations and with California, combine that with California creativity and determination, we will meet the challenges head on and succeed for all of our students and meet the goals of this great committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. I also want to make a couple of remarks because I think the Superintendent really touched on some critical points. One, we do have resources now to invest, and it wasn't always like that. When I was first elected to represent the 18th Assembly District, which is Oakland, Alameda, and San Leandro in the East Bay, we were just emerging from a great recession. The budget that I was a part of, and I'm not claiming credit for it, was the first one that was balanced with a surplus in many, many years. There were dark days where about $40 billion worth of cuts had to be made in a single year of just a statewide budget that's just over $100 billion. So now that we have the resources, we're able to invest in critical things like restorative justice and teacher training and college readiness, all the things that Mr. Torlakson talked about. But we could be hitting another cliff if we don't pass Prop 55. That's the extension of Prop 30. So this is a critical election year in so many ways, from the presidential ticket on down. But for those of you in this room who are warriors for our school system and our kids and our teachers, we must get Prop 55 passed this year to continue to just to not take steps backwards and to continue to be able to consider moving forward. I just wanted to ask one question.
Sure.
Of the superintendent. Of all the different issues that you mentioned, is there one which you consider most pressing? And if you had unlimited resources, what would the best solution be to help address it?
That's a tough question. Everything we mentioned obviously is important. I'll also mention one thing that we're doing. I'm initiating through the collaborative, the California Collaborative for Education Excellence. We're going to be doing a series of pilot projects looking at how to turn around schools that have gotten in trouble academically and financially and so forth. And one of the big pushes I have is for helping English learners and getting the best strategies so we can help those youngsters reclass quicker as proficient in English, and we can help the older students who have been languishing in the list of English learner student roles. We need to move them off again into fluency and deft use of the English language. I think it's this combination strategy, and teaching, having the best teachers and having diversity, having role models that students can see themselves and the teacher in front of them, I think is really important. It may rise above this teacher shortage, may give us an opportunity to look at how to better diversify our teacher workforce. So I would say that's a key element, and the others, it's a multifaceted strategy, and I think we need to invest in all at the same time as much as we can stretch the dollar.
Thank you. That's wonderful. I was really excited to hear about the career pathways to teacher training and the results showing that those who do the career pathway end up teaching in the neighborhood that they're from. So that's wonderful data. We're ready to go to our first panel, and that's our K-12 panel. And we're honored to have with us today Dr. Earl Perkins, Associate Superintendent, District Operations, Los Angeles Unified School District. Thank you and welcome, Dr. Perkins. We also have with us Dr. Ramona Bishop, Superintendent of Vallejo City Unified School District and President of the California Association of African American Superintendents and Administrators. And finally, we have with us Alex Johnson, Executive Director, Children's Defense Fund, California. We have an amazing panel. Thank you for being with us today. Appreciate your time and participation. And Dr. Perkins, when you're ready, why don't you kick us off?
Chairman Bonta, Chairperson Jones-Sawyer Sr., State Superintendent Torkelson, and members of this important committee. First, I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the Los Angeles Unified School District, specific to a very crucial topic that has been one of the main focus areas, not only in the district, but also statewide, which is addressing the needs of boys and men of color in California. My name is Dr. Earl Perkins, Associate Superintendent of District Operations for the Los Angeles Unified School District. Today, I will briefly share with you what we have been doing in the Los Angeles Unified School District in support of the needs of our boys and young men of color, how we have come this far in achieving some of our goals, and what our plans are to fully achieve them. As the second largest urban school district in the country, the Los Angeles Unified School District enrolls more than 732,000 students in kindergarten through 12th grade at over 780 campuses, and including 211 public charter schools. To be specific with today's discussion of boys and men of color, LAUSD had an enrollment last year of approximately 82.14% Latino and African American students. Of that, 37.9% of which are Latino males and 4.2% African American males. LAUSD has a large population of minority students, and approximately 84% of our LAUSD students fall into the state's high needs student categories under local control funding formula as low income, English learners, and foster youth. In Los Angeles Unified School District, we use the statistics as focus points in our continued efforts to address the needs of students, in particular our young men of color, to reduce issues of disparity, inequity in access, opportunities, and achievement. These focus points provide us that guidance in the development of the Local Control Accountability Plan, better known with all as the LCAP. Most of our programs are supported by proven practices that ensure staff is properly serving the targeted youth and aimed at achieving improved academic outcomes, all of which are aligned with our goals in addressing the needs of our boys and young men of color. Most of these resources are utilized to, 1, increase college, career, and academic counseling support for high school students, support students needing to meet A to G academic requirements and ensuring students are on track for graduation, to increase restorative justice programming by hiring additional restorative justice teachers and advisors, to expand the program to middle and elementary school sites, to increase supports for the foster youth achievement programs, to support the development of a homeless youth support program, as well as provide for proper data systems for tracking homeless youth in the district. And lastly, to fully implement a new early education program for our 4-year-olds with highest priority given to schools with the largest shares of high-need students. Our new superintendent, Ms. Michelle King, aligns the district's goals and core beliefs in assuring that all of LA youth are achieving. Just to briefly mention LAUSD's goals, which are 100% graduation, proficiency for all, 100% attendance, parent, community, student engagement, and lastly, school safety. As part of our achievements in leading these efforts, LAUSD is proud to join President Obama's challenge and recently created the My Brother's Keeper implementation plan, which you have a copy in your documents that you have before you. LAUSD recognizes that it will take a collaborative, united, and focused effort by the district, city, and country to eradicate the special challenges to achievement faced by our young men of color. The implementation plan will serve as a summary of the strategies and tactics that are being and will be utilized to implement the pledge of our district has taken to improve the academic, social, and outcomes of our young men of color. We know that in order to succeed, we need ongoing collaboration with our school districts, our stakeholders, and our plan to form cross-sector alliances with the larger communities such as business, philanthropy, families, government, faith-based organizations, and media sources. LAUSD has also put forth several educational initiatives and programs to improve academic and life trajectory of African American students within Los Angeles. To highlight a few, various divisions and units in LAUSD have done important work focusing on our students, parent, teacher, and school community groups. Our student groups, we have a great program called the Village Movement Mentoring and Role Modeling Program. Our parent group, we have a group that's called the African American Family Day Program, which takes care of family days on various high school campuses. And lastly, another program, the Teacher and Community Group Program, the UCLA-LAUSD Collaborative Partnership, which aligns with a number of our high schools and taking our young men of color on the campuses, seeing how they could best fit in and prepare themselves. One additional program that is closely monitored by the Division of District Operations under my direction is worth highlighting. For the third year, LA Unified School District has received investment funds through the LCAP to support the expansion of the Discipline Foundation policy and restorative justice practices. LA Unified School District sets specific goals and targets to address school safety and, most importantly, to ensure effective and fair handling of student behavior by promoting positive solutions through the reform of student discipline policies and practices. This work provides students, families, schools, and communities a way to ensure accountability while at the same time breaking the cycle of retribution and violence from being punitive to being restorative. Over the years, Los Angeles Unified School District has used discipline data as part of the continuous efforts in helping our students achieve. In the fall of 2011, LA Unified entered into an agreement to resolve with our Office of Civil Rights to address concerns regarding disproportionate suspension rates affecting one of the groups as part of the Boys and Young Men of Color, which is the African American group. In response, the Office of Civil Rights agreement to resolve, and in alignment with AB 1729 and our LAUSD Board resolution, the Office of School Operations focused on other means of corrective and alternative to suspension strategies to eliminate the disproportionality and discipline imposed on African American students, as well as cultivating an environment of positive behavior intervention and support. Since then, we have made great strides in helping our students, as shown in the decrease in our suspension rates. Suspension rates for all students in 2007-2008, the district suspension rate was 8.1%. In the 14-15 school year, the suspension rate was 0.6%, a 93% decrease over 7 years. Our instructional days lost to suspension for all students in 2007-08 was over 74,765 instructional days lost to suspension. When we closed out the 14-15 school year, the district lost 6,221 days of instruction lost to suspension, which is a 92% decrease over 7 years. Instructional days lost for suspension for African American students. In 2007-08, African American students lost 21,573 days of instructional days to suspension. At the end of 14-15, we lost only 2,301 days of instructional days lost to suspension, which was an 89% decrease over 7 years. The successes we have seen in the programs we have put in place are designed for continuous improvement. LA Unified School District will continue to enhance our work for our students with a more focused effort around young men of color. The above information serves as a part of a framework that we are continuing to refine so that our community better serves our young men of color and to ensure that they graduate college and career ready. The Los Angeles Unified School District believes in our students and will work hard to assist them to achieve. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this information with you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Perkins. We'll move through all the panelists first, and then we'll have an opportunity for some dialogue afterwards. Dr. Bishop?
Very good. Good afternoon. It's good to see both of you. I'm here in dual roles. I'm here as the superintendent of the Vallejo City Unified School District, but I'm also the newly elected president of the California African American Association for Superintendents and Administrators, and I'm proud to be in that role. Most of my comments will come from the latter role. I could talk to you today about the fact that 5 years ago I took over Vallejo City Unified School District, a district in state receivership, where 1 out of 2 of our students were graduating from high school. I could also talk about the fact that that same district had belief systems that were not in alignment with the fact that what we all believe that all students can learn. Yet I won't do that. I'll talk about the great things that have happened since then. Tom talked about the graduation rates increasing in the state. Our graduation rates went from 50% to now almost 75%. And in fact, at one of our high schools, the graduation rate is very close to the state average. It's at 80%, and the achievement gap has closed. So you do not see an achievement gap in graduation rate at one of our high schools, which is a huge deal in 5 years. I could also talk with you about the fact that our school district has received $6 million from the Career Pathways Trust grant, and the fact that we have gone to what's called wall-to-wall academies. I think what I'll say about that is that a lot of people have gone kicking and screaming. A lot of my time is spent convincing people that our young people, we have 30% African American students, we have 30% Latino students, we have 20% Filipino students, we have a mix of white and other Asian in the rest of the groups. And a lot of my time is spent convincing people that our young people can actually go to college. And that is just something that is unacceptable to me, and I'm very vocal about that. And so when we say that we need quality teachers in every classroom, I would suggest that we absolutely need that, but we also need administrators that have that belief. We need classified staff members that have that belief, and we also need parents that have that belief and will support us. I could talk with you about the fact that in our LCAP, we have allocated some money for an African American parent advisory. I think often when African American parents are asked to get involved or engaged in the school system, they're asked about how they can help their children or almost helped us do our job. In fact, instead of how can you help us be more culturally competent? How can you help us learn about the assets in your community? How can you help us connect with the pastors and the religious leaders so we can get more mentors in our schools? So that is what we've created that group to do. Now I'll move to my second role, which is the president of the African American Superintendents and Administrators. And I'll say this, that we're going to take our training and our development of our administrators very seriously. So anyone who is connected to this organization will be somebody that believes that every child can learn in our school systems. It will be somebody that really understands the needs of all students. We could be hyper-focused on the needs of African American students, but as you know, almost 50% of the kindergarten students in our state are Latino. In our community, we have to focus on our Filipino students as well, large congregation of those students in our community. And every group has different cultural constructs, different ways of engaging with the world, and we have to know what those are so we can connect with those communities. As we think forward to what Boys and Men of Color is doing and can continue to do, I would suggest that every classroom is staffed with a teacher that understands every student. That is the absolute way to close the achievement gap. There's no other way. In fact, I get a little tired about the fact that when we talk about African American and Latino communities, we talk about safety all the time. instead of how are students achieving in these schools? Do they have a quality teacher that believes in them and understands them and sees them going to college? That's how we change things in the state of California. I'll suggest one last thing as I wrap. I kind of am a person who has walked the walk. Rob, when you talk about Oakland Unified, that was my first teaching position. I was E. Morse Cox Elementary on the corner of 98th and Bancroft, and I loved it. I would still be there if somebody didn't encourage me to go into an administrative position. During my last years of teaching, I taught a 4th grade class. I sat with them during the summer, and we did a summer intensive program, and then I taught that very same class in 5th grade. And over the past year, I've been kind of testing the pipeline to prison concept. Did my babies end up engaging with the juvenile justice system? One of them comes to mind. I'll tell you his story very briefly. His name was Philip, and is still Philip, but he goes by another name. I'll talk about that in a second. He could have been the CEO of a Fortune 500 company right out of, as he graduated 12th grade. Brilliant young man, artistic young man. I still have some of his art in my house. When I finally got an opportunity to connect with him, I found out that yes, he had touched the juvenile justice system multiple times. And he's now a famous rapper. Oh, you're famous. Okay, tell me, what's your name so I can look you up and maybe you can come talk to my kids. When I looked him up, I found that there's no way that I could have him come talk to my kids because he was talking about violence in the community, glorifying violence in the community, glorifying that life, you know, that life. And so when I finally got a chance to do a face-to-face with him, I said, baby, you were brilliant. What happened? Why would you go down this road of talking about things that are so negative? He said, Dr. Bishop, in fact, he calls me Mrs. Robinson. That was my name when I taught him. He said, Mrs. Robinson, you know, my life in crime started when I was 13. The things that you see me talking about in my rap is my life. Because, you know, that's just the way it is. And I said, well, honey, what would it have taken for you to not have that life? What would it have taken? You were one of my best babies. He said, you know, you left the community. And since then, nobody saw that same light in me. In fact, my crime started right after you left. And so I suggest to all of us that we must find teachers that are invested in our communities. We must find teachers that believe every child has the capacity. And we must find administrators that will support that path for young people. And CASA is committed to providing the training and development necessary to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bishop. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. And thank you to Chairman Bonta, Chairman Joe Sawyer, and Superintendent Torlickson for your leadership and commitment. My name is Alex Johnson. I have the privilege of serving as Executive Director of the Children's Defense Fund, California. And the Children's Defense Fund California is the largest state office of the Children's Defense Fund, a national child advocacy organization founded in 1973 by civil rights leader and child advocate Marion Wright Edelman. We're focused on leveling the playing field and changing the odds for all children. We do this in a number of ways by leveraging direct service with research and data analysis, public education, media outreach, policy development, training and technical assistance, legislative and legal advocacy, and youth organizing to champion policies and programs that do four things: lift children, particularly children of color, out of poverty, provide every child access to comprehensive, affordable, quality health coverage and care to be able to survive and thrive, ensure educational equity, and that California enacts robust school discipline, school funding, and accountability policies that prioritize all students, but particularly those who are poor, students of color, and students with special needs. And finally, transform justice systems for youth by shifting resources away from incarceration while investing in the development and healing of youth in their homes and communities. There are a number of programs and policy priorities that CDF focuses on, but my remarks will be focused on one of our core programs, which is the CDF Freedom Schools program, which was launched in 1995 with a goal of advancing a transformative vision of education for all children. The CDF Freedom School program has served more than 140,000 pre-K through 12th grade children and youth since its inception. More than 16,000 college students and young adults, known as servant leader interns and Ella Baker trainers, have been trained by the Children's Defense Fund to deliver this model and build a pipeline to increase the number of teachers of color in our classrooms. In California, the CDF Freedom Schools are serving almost 1,900 student scholars this summer across 27 sites, stretching from Los Angeles to Sacramento, Oakland, to Long Beach. And we do this through a number of community partners, including Community Coalition, Reed Lead, Lincoln Child Center in Alameda County, Holman United Methodist Church, First New Christian Fellowship Church, Roberts Family Development Center in Sacramento, the Pasadena Unified School District, LAUSD, Sacramento Unified School District, Linwood Unified School District, and the LA County Office of Education, and the LA County Probation Department, and the Alameda County Probation Department. Of the 27 Freedom School sites this summer, 15 are located in Los Angeles County, and they represent about 53.5% of the students that are served. And of the 2,534 applications received, we are enrolling a little over 1,853 student scholars, which are about 73% of students that are served, leaving a gap of about 27%. Student scholars range from 5 to 17 years of age. Over 68% of student scholars are female, while 32% are male. The majority of our scholars are African American and Latino. 43% are African American, 27% are Latino, 20% are Caucasian, and 3% are Asian. In South LA, since 2010, almost 3,000 student scholars have been served by CDF Freedom Schools. Individually and collectively, they've read almost 13,000 books since that time. So the question is, what exactly are Freedom Schools, or CDF Freedom Schools? First and foremost, they are more than simply a 6-week free research-based and culturally competent summer and after-school academic enrichment opportunity that helps children and youth fall in love with reading, boost self-esteem, and generate more positive attitudes toward learning. CDF Freedom Schools is a philosophy. It flips the status quo of pedagogy on its head. And their 5 essential ideals or components of a CDF Freedom School. Number 1, high-quality academic enrichment centered around literacy. Secondly, parent and family involvement. Third, civic engagement and social action. Fourth, intergenerational leadership development. And fifth, nutrition, health, and mental health focus, reducing trauma and chronic obesity in our communities. CDF Freedom Schools are uniquely different than traditional models of education. Each day begins with a healthy breakfast and transitions into Harambee, a Swahili term that means coming together, and an activity in which the students, scholars, the staff, the guests, they sing motivational songs, they do cheers and chants. There's a read aloud guest, they share a moment of silence and reflection. Student scholars then transition to the integrated reading curriculum, in which they read and study culturally relevant books. And then right before a healthy lunch, student scholars drop everything and read for 15 minutes. They then return to the integrated reading curriculum and utilize the afternoon for other enriching activities. CDF Freedom Schools have a 10-to-1 student scholar to teacher ratio, and parent engagement is a critical part of the commitment that is made for students to attend the program. CDF Freedom Schools are important not just because it is a paradigm shift in the manner in which children are taught. They are important as an intervention to address summer learning loss. There are over 9 million children in California. Nearly 3 in 4, or 73%, are children of color. 1 out of every 4 children in California lives in poverty. That's about 24.8% of our children. 9.3% of those children live in extreme poverty. The percentage of students who met or exceeded standards on the new Common Core assessment in 6th grade ELA was only 26% for Black students, 30% for Latino students, compared to 42% for all students. And lastly, just for context, the juvenile arrest rate for African American students is 29%. There's a toxic combination of poverty, lack of educational achievement, and overcriminalization of youth that persists in communities of color. And so when you add the overlay of summer learning loss to that toxic brew, and when there are not remedies to adequately address it, we are leaving behind generations of young people. And with the decrease in summer schools and absence of academic enrichment opportunities for children and youth who are attempting to simply survive and thrive, CDF Freedom Schools are an important intervention and prevention model to replicate. According to the National Summer Learning Loss Association, every summer low-income youth lose 2 to 3 months in reading while their higher income peers make slight gains. The research demonstrates that academic achievement gaps widen during the summer. Summer learning loss can leave low-income students 2.5 to 3 years behind their peers. And low-income youth lose access to healthy meals over the summer. 6 out of every 7 students who receive free and reduced price lunches lose access to them when school lets out. And so since 2010, CDF Freedom Schools across California have witnessed 82% of student scholars maintaining or gaining in their instructional reading levels and not experiencing summer learning loss based on pre and post tests as a result of Freedom Schools. Earlier this morning, I was at LAUSD's own Fremont High School in South Los Angeles to attend the culminating program for our CDF Freedom School focused solely on boys and young men of color. And this is the second summer of a partnership with Reed Lead, with California State University, Dominguez Hills Male Success Alliance, and with the Children's Defense Fund California, explicitly focused on Black and brown males and literacy. Almost 97% of the scholars who exited the program exited with positive reading attitudes. 100% of those scholars reported being a better reader when they began the program. Almost 2/3 of all those scholars experienced an increase in their reading level over the summer and 1 or more grade level. 92% became actively engaged in social action and in their communities. And most importantly, 100% of all those scholars reported that they would in fact graduate from high school and go to college. And that number is important when 27% and 14-15 of Black males completed A through G requirements in California, and only 29% of Latino males completed A through G requirements in California. Finally, as I close, we also see a paradigm shift among males in our juvenile justice facilities, which in 2013 began supporting CDF Freedom Schools in Los Angeles County through a partnership with the Los Angeles County Office of Education, the Los Angeles County Probation Department, and with LA County Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas. 171 young men were served in camps Afflerball and Camp Miller. And by the way, LA County has the largest juvenile justice system in the nation. All male, 64% were Latinos, 23% African American, 13% identified as either white or having 1 or more ethnicities. 95% of the participants were between the ages of 15 through 18. We trained at CDF California, we trained certificated teachers, college students, and probation officers together. And in year 1, reading scores increased from the pre and post tests by an average of 60 points. We also found a 50% reduction in in-camp suspensions and disciplinary actions. And so based on this success, we expanded to additional camps in LA County, including 2 all-girls camps. We also expanded to Camp Sweeney in Alameda County in 2014. And serving between, on an annual basis, 30 to 50 youth ages 14 to 19 each summer. And the result at Camp Sweeney has been consistent annual increases in student scholar reading levels of at least 1 grade level. CDF Freedom Schools are picking up where we're leaving off, engaging young people in a culturally competent manner, building a pipeline for college students to go into the teaching profession, utilizing culturally competent and relevant curriculum, and focusing on intergenerational leadership and robust parent engagement. And so I encourage this committee to help our partners expand and sustain Freedom Schools across this state. They are making a difference. This is not a panacea, but it is an important model for replication to save our sons and our brothers. And I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. We have a small opportunity to have a little dialogue and conversation before we move to our next panel, and I want to give an opportunity to the State Superintendent of Public Instruction if you have any comments or questions.
I really appreciated the information you shared and the passion around serving your students. One thing, if you could each comment briefly, what are your most effective strategies you think for engaging parents that you've tried and find work, and recognizing, as Dr. Bishop said, that different cultures, different ethnic backgrounds have different frameworks for engaging. Could you share some of those thoughts?
Thank you, Superintendent. It's amazing. We know that we cannot do this job mimicking exactly what Dr. Bishop said. We can't do this job without our parents. In LA Unified School District, our parent community services and student branch, they engage with parents on a regular basis. We have set up ongoing parent centers on all of our campuses that the parents work directly with our principals to definitely review the goals, the core values of the district, and definitely how they transfer this over to the parents inside. We work with our parent community service branches. We work with our young folks. They are part of our mentoring programs. As part of our training program, they are being trained in the restorative justice practices as all of our teachers and our students are going through the processes. We feel that that is necessary because of the fact if it's going to be implemented properly, then our parents need to know the processes in which it is to be implemented. So therefore, we encourage our students. They're now, it's amazing, using talking pieces at the dinner tables with their parents to have more articulation. There's no more playing with your computers and playing with your cell phones, but more so talking, which has gotten away from the world in the last 20 years. I'm a lot older than a lot of folks out there, but I remember sitting with my mom and dad in Connecticut many, many years ago, but dinner was always going to be at 6 o'clock, and you had to be there no matter what. But our parents are seeing the value now, the training in restorative justice, training in darkness to light, training in empathy and how to work with our kids, and training on how to realize what is behavior that is not acceptable, but yet talking with folks. So those things, training, implementation of restorative practices, and implementation of our parent centers in all our campuses to infuse their beliefs and concepts with their principals to definitely share with others some of the things that we're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the question. I think ours is really based on an asset-based model. And so often when we bring our parents together, we're talking at them as if we're the experts and they need to learn something. And we flipped the script to where now I have a parent leadership council that I meet with once a month. They advise me. I do very little talking because this group, you can barely get a word in edgewise. We have parents and grandparents on this group. And we work collaboratively on projects, those kinds of things. In addition, like LA Unified, any training we do that's a big system-wide change, we bring our design teams together. And the design team, again, consists of administrators, teachers, parents, and classified members. So the design team hears all the information simultaneously and then helps implement at the school site. That includes academic information, Common Core training. All of that is done by a huge group of people from the school. And that way, when it comes to anything, the messaging, the communication out there about what's going on at the school, the parents have the information just like everyone else. And again, because our African American community is the lowest scoring community in our district, which is not unlike any district in California, and they don't have the ELAT, which at this point for us is mostly Latinos, parents and families, including English-speaking Latino. We have created this African American Parent Advisory Board. And their real goal is to, speaking of intergenerational, they really want to do some mentoring with young parents, and they want to do some engagement with them about how to get the word out for other young parents, whether it's social media or whatever that ends up being. Thank you.
The City of California starts from the premise that parents are their children, or their child's first and best teacher. And so we focus on building out the continuum for children and families. We focus on the whole child. We know that so many of our parents who we are serving are simply trying to put a roof over their head, food on the table, clothes on their children's back. And so we meet them where they are, and we work with them consistently. We stay consistently and persistently engaged with them. One of the worst things that you can do for children and parents is to come in and out of their life. You've got to stay on task all the time. One of the short story, we had a parent whose daughter came to CDF Freedom Schools. The daughter was not really doing so well in school, wasn't really interested in school, and was a young girl. But one day, after being in CDF Freedom Schools for a couple of weeks, this parent found her daughter post-curfew hiding in the bathroom with the light of a cell phone, reading a book. And that inspired that parent because she, at that point, saw that there was a light in her daughter and it just had to be sparked the right way. And that has motivated that parent to get even further engaged. It wasn't that she was a bad parent whatsoever, it just she saw that and it inspired her. And so we work with parents in all sorts of different ways. There's no one-size-fits-all approach that we take, but we stay consistent and persistently engaged in their lives and build out that continuum for them.
Great. That's great.
Thank you. Dr. Perkins, can I ask you a quick follow-up question? I was really struck by the data and the improvement in the suspensions in particularly among boys and men of color. Was that because willful defiance was no longer used, or was it for other reasons?
In 2013-14, our board members put the initiative to eliminate a willful defiance as a means of suspension for us. It was a very bold statement made by our board members, but this was halfway through the time. So we had already started the process from 2011, 10-11, when we first got our resolve from the Office of Civil Rights. So we'd already started that, but the willful defiance, we found that 83% of our suspensions were for that. But what is willful defiance? I did not bring my paper to school, I didn't listen to you, I did not do my homework, and I talked back to you, or I cursed at you. Willful defiance. So we said, we just got to find other alternatives. But not just to find those alternatives, you had to put this together, you had to train your teachers, because the first thing they do want to do is to eliminate them from the classroom. But we want to let them know that the minute you eliminate them from the classroom, then you relinquish your power or your authority over this child. This child, as Dr. Bishop stated, when she left the community, there was like nobody cared. You can't let these kids know that they don't care. So therefore, we explained to them what the process would be, and that we have found alternatives to these suspensions, but you need to be in school. So it was a process over the 7 years, but the last 4 or 5 years definitely was increased with the will. We are so happy now with the state that now willful defiance will be eliminated from K3, and I think next year it becomes 412, and it's time to look at other ways to make things happen. The children, these young folks need to be listened to and be heard. Us adults need to take time and recognize where they come from. We cannot live in an area that's highfalutin, if I may use it like that, teaching kids down in the local social economical area and hold them to standards up here if we don't understand them down here. I think we got to come to where they are, and then they'll believe in us, and I think that will help contribute to that.
Thank you, Dr. Perkins. Dr. Bishop, I wanted to ask you a follow-up question because one of your comments also struck me. I think you said that one of the main thing that we need in our classrooms to help address the achievement gap and make sure our kids are successful is making sure that we have a teacher who knows all their kids and also who believes in all their kids and believes they will be successful and go to college. What is the biggest obstacle to that right now, and what would you recommend the state do? What can we do to help?
So, a couple things. One, messaging around the teaching profession. I mean, I loved being a teacher. And I think a lot of people really don't understand what the salary schedule looks like for a teacher. At the top of our salary schedule, I don't know about LA, you might be more competitive than we are, but we're almost $90,000 a year with your summers off. So how many people actually know that? They hear teachers lament about we don't have enough money, but we need to do a little more messaging around the things that we love about being teachers. I think the other piece is, and I know Tom is working a lot on this, and that is perhaps forgivable loans or really ways that people can defray the cost of being teachers, getting that credential. Because I have a number of my classified staff that we've been able to tap. Okay, I want to be a teacher, and then they're delayed because they don't have the money to get their credential. So I think if something can be done to help, in this urgent time period to get that done, that would really, really help, because I know we're all tapping on our local communities and we're finding people that want to do it. They just need help with the financing of it. Thank you for the question.
Great. Thank you. Let's have a round of applause for our panel. Dr. Perkins, Dr. Bishop, and Mr. Johnson. Thank you.
Excellent panel.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be moving to our next panel, which focuses on post-secondary. We have Matthew Smith, Male Success Alliance, California State University, Dominguez Hills. We have Julie Sinai, Policy Director, Rediff, and Jeffrey Wallace, President of Leaders Up. Welcome, thank you for being here. And Mr. Smith, why don't you kick us off whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting us to be a part of this conversation and for your leadership on this important topic. My name is Matthew Smith. I'm Director of Educational Partnerships at Cal State University Dominguez Hills, and I'll be talking to you a little bit about our Male Success Alliance program. In 2009, a small group of CSU Dominguez Hills faculty, staff, and administrators came together to form a task force with the purpose of addressing the poor educational and social outcomes for men of color. Later that year, the task force successfully launched the Male Success Alliance. Like many initiatives targeting men of color, MSA started with a few dedicated individuals hoping to make a difference in the lives of young men, but with very few resources. The task force began engaging young men on our campus to offer their support, and soon a small but significant group of 7 outstanding students came together to establish MSA as an official student organization. These students paved the way for establishing a solid foundation for our organization on campus. Today, MSA is a thriving student success initiative focused on improving the outcomes of men of color throughout the educational pipeline. MSA members benefit from mentoring, personal and professional development opportunities, and civic engagement. The outcomes for MSA can be summed up by our 3 C's: conscious, competent, and committed. We want our young men to be conscious of who they are, where they come from, and the oppressive policies and ideologies that lead to inequitable outcomes. We want them to be competent, to master their craft by excelling inside and outside of the classroom. And we want them to be committed to lifelong learning, social justice, civic engagement, and the process of becoming better men. Fueled by the tenets of consciousness, competence, and commitment, the goals of MSA are to create a college-going, college-staying, and college-graduating culture, to close the achievement gap between male and females, to increase success via college preparation, access, and participation, to focus on persistence and retention programs, and to build partnerships and strengthen collaborations with K-12 schools, community colleges, community-based organizations, faith-based institutions, and families. In 2013, President Hagan made a significant investment in MSA and charged us with engaging the young men in our local community. Today, the Male Success Alliance is composed of 2 sub-programs. Our middle school and high school initiative focused on college preparation, and the university initiative focused on retention and graduation. MSA serves approximately 250 students per year in the middle school and high school initiative, and 100 students per year through the university on campus. Our program is rooted in theory and research. For example, research has found that despite our diverse backgrounds, men of color go to college for about 2 primarily reasons. Number 1 is to provide for our families, and 2 is to give back to our communities. We also know that some of the major challenges our young men face is paying for the rising cost of college and the responsibility of helping to provide for their families. Knowing this, our program hires our college members to mentor at local middle schools and high schools. In doing so, we give them the opportunity to give back to their community, understand the connection between what they're learning in the classroom and what's happening in our local neighborhoods, and earn money to offset some of their financial obligations. Right now, we partner with 10 local schools in LAUSD and surrounding school districts, and our college students work with students, faculty, and staff at middle schools and high schools to provide mentoring and support throughout the instructional day. Our classroom-based program uses guest speakers, field trips, and college and career access curriculum to encourage and inspire students to excel inside of the classroom and recognize their ability to create meaningful change in their local community. Additionally, MSA members work with, our college students work with our faculty and staff every year on campus to hold our annual Spring Summit. This year, our event hosted over 750 local middle school and high school and college-age young men. The event brings youth to campus for a day-long summit designed to equip students with the tools and resources necessary for post-secondary success. MSA members facilitate discussions and workshops and connect with students and serve as chaperones and guides. Our college members participate in once-a-month college general body meetings. These interactive meetings cover personal and professional development, leadership and social justice, and members participate in one-on-one meetings with advisors and go through what we call a rites of passage in order to be inducted as official members into our organization. Our college members participate in various multi-day events such as our men's retreat, which is a weekend-long retreat designed to address issues such as sexism, violence, gender roles and expectations, and the social construction of masculinity. A recent assessment conducted by Dr. Derek Brooms, professor at the University of Louisville, revealed that participating in MSA fostered a sense of community. Many members talked about their relationship with MSA brothers or feeling like they were a part of a family. Being a part of MSA gave them men a sense of accountability and purpose. The brothers hold each other accountable and hold each other to high expectations. Most of the MSA members attributed their persistence in college to this sense of community. Brooms also found that the men's bonding also allows for cooperative coping strategies, impacts their sense of self, and contributes to their masculine identities and manhood constructs. Our college chapter has a total of 45 college graduates, boasts a 90% retention rate, and the overall GPA for Black and Latino males in MSA is significantly higher than non-MSA Black and Latino males on campus. Lastly, 90% of the 2016 MSA high school graduating class will enroll in college in the fall 2016, and 52% of them will begin by enrolling in a four-year university. These outcomes are possible due to the collaborations with our local community and our focus on countering the master narrative regarding the lack of achievement for boys and men of color. Instead, we choose to work together and speak to their promise and legacy of resilience and success. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I want to thank Chairman Jones-Sawyer, welcome, and Chairman Bonta and Superintendent Torlakson. My name is Julie Sinai. I am the Policy Director at REDF, the Roberts Enterprise Development Fund. And we are a 20-year-old California-based venture philanthropy and intermediary that provides business, technical assistance, and funding to social enterprises that are dedicated to employing people who have barriers to employment. There is bipartisan agreement that improving the quality and quantity of work is key to reducing poverty and fostering opportunity, responsibility, and security. Yet millions of people are left out of the labor market despite the fact that they want to work and they have much to contribute. Some have overcome obstacles like histories of incarceration, homelessness. Some struggle with addiction and mental illness. Some have post-traumatic stress, and many young adults are disconnected from school and work. Most employees of California's employment social enterprises are men of color. 25% have never had a legitimate job. 70% have been convicted of a crime. 80% have experienced with housing instability. We're all familiar with the statistics. The question is, what are the solutions? Social enterprises are double bottom line businesses with a social mission. Providing real jobs, training, and support to people whose histories have left them out of the job market is the mission of employment social enterprises. Men and women gain on-the-job experience while earning income. They receive support to address the issues that may have prevented their employment in the past and build skills and abilities that employers demand. In a social enterprise environment, participants have the opportunity to develop confidence, knowledge, and networks to navigate the road to greater economic self-sufficiency and upward mobility. Social enterprises with a focus on employment enable people to prepare for and retain jobs in the competitive workforce, a critical first step in the value chain for labor. Social enterprises like the local conservation corps offer in-house high school education programs and certificates. Other social enterprises provide linkages to adult schools, community colleges, and other post-secondary training. Social enterprises offer a results-based solution. They harness entrepreneurial skills, leverage financial resources of the private sector. They apply resources effectively and efficiently with a social rate of return of 123%. They deliver community-based solutions rather than top-down ideas, and they test and measure what works to scale successful strategies. Social enterprises earn revenue and reduce taxpayer costs. Social enterprises are sustained primarily through their gross revenues and private resources and are less dependent on public dollars than traditional employment and training programs, making them uniquely scalable and sustainable. Social enterprises deliver valuable goods and services to their customers while providing people with a wage-paying job and preparing them for mainstream employment. The business revenue is reinvested to create more jobs and provide supportive work environments to build the employees' skills and abilities. The wages paid increase an employee's personal income and decrease his or her reliance on public benefits. Social enterprise is also an evidence-based solution that breaks the cycle of poverty and incarceration. Independent research by Mathematica shows that employment social enterprises provide a significant return on investment for taxpayers, philanthropy, government, and most importantly, the people they employ. For every dollar spent by an employment social enterprise, there's a rate of return of $2.23 to society and benefits. Additionally, employees saw 286% increase in income, with percent of monthly income shifting from government benefits at 74%, dropping down to 24%. The percentage of people who had a job 1 year after being employed in a social enterprise was 19 points higher than if they received solely traditional employment and training services. And 1 year after the social enterprise employment, stable housing rose from 15% to 53%, with the share of participants renting or owning a home going up from 49% to 81%. Michael's story tells it all. At age 17, Michael was incarcerated for being involved in a gang-related murder. After 17 years in prison, he was paroled with little hope of finding a job. He could have easily ended up right back inside like 70% of those who exit California prisons do. But Michael walked through the doors of the Center for Employment Opportunities, CEO, and broke the cycle of reincarceration. With CEO, Michael received training, support, and a wage-paying job. Michael is now a clinical case manager counseling young people who have been in the criminal justice system. He's working toward his college degree and is an advocate in the anti-recidivism movement. So I have 4 policy requests for you to consider to grow jobs and create opportunities for men and women overcoming barriers to work. The first is to expand the market for social enterprise goods and services, to promote certification and public sector procurement preferences. SB 1219, introduced by Senator Lonnie Hancock, and I'd like to thank, co-authored by Assemblyman Jones-Sawyer, and also co-authored by Senators Hall and Hueso, and Assembly Members Garcia, Brown, and Gibson, is traveling through the legislature right now. It is in the Assembly Appropriations Committee, and what SB 1219 will do is amend the California State Procurement and Contract Act to include certification of employment social enterprises and establishes preference to secure state business and procurement contracts. Secondly, increase capital available for startup and expansion. Consider new programs to fund startup and expansion of social enterprise, and increase access to public financing and resources. Promote Pay for Success and other innovative programs to demonstrate results. Third, make work pay. We need policies to make work pay. This includes expanding work support, earned income tax credit, and also the SNAP and TANF workforce development programs. We want to make sure that moderate assets can be built among low-income families before they lose their child care, their housing, and their transportation assistance. And lastly, we want to build on the power of evidence to strengthen and scale public programs. At the national level, they recently passed the Bipartisan Commission on Evidence-Based Policymaking, H.R. 1831. The commission demonstrates Congress's commitment to using research and evidence to inform decisions so policymakers can direct government resources effectively and efficiently and deliver better outcomes for society. Consider such a commission at the state level. To demonstrate effectiveness, we need to improve access, and I heard this earlier, to state and federal access to data on wages, data on unemployment insurance, and other indicators to assess performance. We share the superintendent's high hopes and high expectations, and we thank you for your commitment.
Thank you. Mr. Wallace.
Good afternoon. I want to thank the chairman and our state superintendent for this opportunity. My name is Jeffrey Wallace, and I'm the founding executive director and now president and CEO of Leaders Up. Leaders Up is a national social enterprise and intermediary that was launched out of the Starbucks Corporation to bridge the divide between the untapped potential of young people and the business challenge in finding and keeping the right talent. I am here to not just represent the interests of Leaders Up, but represent the interests of the private sector as a response to the question that was pointedly put in front of the public by this select committee of, is the education system addressing the needs of boys and men of color? And our poignant response is no. If we look across the state of California right now, we understand that there is a 36% unemployment rate of boys and men of color between 18 and 29. That is approximately 6 times the unemployment rate of the state of California. And this data is pulled from the California Employment Development Department. That net loss in talent is going to create a $96 billion loss in revenue for the state of California. And as we examine the cradle to prison pipeline, we also understand that about 1 out of every 3 African American men in California are in the juvenile justice system. This is something that is deplorable, but is also reflective of some of the systemic issues that are present across our education system. There are currently over 325,000 boys and men of color that are currently disconnected from the economy and the education system between the ages of 16 to 24. That's approximately 1 out of every 5 young people between the ages of 16 to 24 in California. And we present to you from the private sector and as a social enterprise that's an intermediary focused on youth unemployment, that this is bad news for not just the public sector and society, but this is an economic and business imperative that we must address with urgency. Why? Well, when we listen to the private sector, about 53% of businesses across the nation say that finding and keeping the right talent is the key to their success. 54% of those businesses say that this has the lack of access to talent from entry level through middle skill level has an impact significantly on their ability to meet their clients' needs. Moreover, businesses have not been able to receive the support necessary to grow and retain the next generation of talent, and it's costing them $15,000 to $25,000 per individual that is not retained over 9 months, which is also a net loss for our economy. When we look at this and unpack it across the high growth sectors of California today, we know that there is approximately 300,000 plus jobs that will be generated through one high growth sector alone, and that's the healthcare sector. The reality is that our education system is not preparing our young people for, as our superintendent has provided through Career Pathways investment, proper on-roads to educational pathways that lead to sustainable careers that offer a positive net worth, 300% above the poverty line, which we know is a family-sustaining wage for young people in California today. As we move forward, not only is the private sector saying that this is not effective, but our global, national, and local economy here in California is stating that the education system is not providing the talent necessary to drive the economy forward. We just unpacked multicultural buying power for a moment. We've seen across the nation that multicultural buying power, these marginalized communities representative in the boys and men of color contingency, has grown over 415% over the last 2 decades. What that means is that these communities that have been systemically marginalized now have to be forced to the core of our economy, and this is unachievable without pathways to careers across the state. So when we look at the education system, there are 3 gaps that actually implode this relevancy gap of our education system. The first one is the exposure gap. Our young people become what they see. And the reality is that through the education system, through K through 12, young people are not seeing the myriad of different career pathways that exist across the private sector. This can be solved through linked learning, but there is a fundamental disconnect between educators and the private sectors around the importance of them participating in this system as a talent development agent rather than just an educator. Some would say those go hand in hand. Beyond the exposure gap, there's an opportunity gap. Young men of color particularly do not have the social capital in order to transcend into career pathways. This is evidenced by the 40-50 outcomes that we see across the higher education system. Only 40% of young men across the California system understand what they want to become professionally after they leave the education system, and less than half actually have a job. So they're graduating with they're graduating with a degree that is not aligned with a career and extremely in debt, which is a net loss also for our economy. Beyond what the education system is saying, Leaders Up has a couple recommendations as it relates to the work in order to bridge the divide between our education system and the private sector. Number one, we need to focus on end-to-end talent development and retention services. We need to understand with critical certainty the competencies necessary for businesses to drive their business forward, and then map those competencies across our post-secondary stackable credential system, and then insert policies that actually promote businesses through on-the-job training and tuition reimbursement necessary to build the talent that they need and offer pathways for young men of color. Assemblymember Bonta, you would appreciate that Leaders Up has connected over 1,950 young people to employment over the last 2 years. Of that 1,950, 1,000 plus have been in the state of California. As of last week, we partnered with My Brother's Keeper initiative of the White House in order to implement the Pathways to Success Career Summit that actually employed 350 plus young men in one day. It engaged 30 employers and 17 were hiring and offering jobs on the spot. But the reality is today is that we have an education system that is disconnected from industry, which now leaves America's economy and California's economy left out in the cold without the talent necessary to drive our future forward. Thank you.
Thank you. So let me begin by apologizing for being late, or I probably should have Southwest apologize. Or I should have flown into San Francisco like Mr. Bonta. My office is just right here, and I flew into Vegas, and you would imagine what that was like. I am extremely happy to be here, to sit with you, to talk about these issues. I think we're about 15 minutes or so behind schedule, but I will, since my office is right there and I can walk to my house, I will stay here until we hear everybody and every comment. So if we have to go past 4:30, I'm going to let you know that I will be here, and if the other speakers, Mr. Bonta, Mr. Torlakson, who took care of everything until I got here, I'll be here to back cleanup if we have to. As I was walking in, and as I parked my car near my office, I walked past a mother and her son, an African-American boy, and I overheard the young boy say, as he was eating his burrito, "Is this my dinner? Is this all I'm going to eat today?" And I almost stopped and didn't come in here because of that. And I thought about all the nourishment that an individual can have, but not only the substantive things you get from the nourishment of food. I was just thinking, you have the California African American Museum here, the Science Center over there, the Natural History Museum right across the way. We have so many things that young boy, the young man, could also get nourishment from, and all he cares about is his basic needs. And I think what you're addressing right now is that we're not addressing the mental needs of our young boys and men of color. When I think of the schools in my district, I see an open door and I see a lot of kids go in. And if any of you know about Ghana and Goree Island, there's a door. It's a door of no return. It's where millions and millions and millions of Africans walked through that door, they didn't know they were going to be slaves. They didn't know they were going to be slaves in the Caribbean, Brazil, or here in America. When I drive around my district, a lot of times I kind of see that door of no return as these kids go in the education system, and whether or not they'll get the substantive things that they need to succeed. I'm old. I'm older than these guys. And I remember a time when we had trades in our schools. If you didn't want to go to college, you can go to auto shop, carpenter shop, there was metal shop. And once you got out, you could get a job and you could sustain a middle-class family. And if you had the energy that you wanted to go to college, there were avenues for that. If you were incorrigible and you sat before a judge, sometimes he gave an option of either going to jail or going into the military, where they taught you how to shine your shoes, show up to work on time, follow orders, and again, to be able to get a job when you got out of the military. And so I appreciate this panel when we talk about connecting our education system to a goal, because I think you're absolutely right. These kids are missing the ultimate goal, and so that's why they take the easy way out and not do the work that you need to be able to sustain yourself for the rest of your life. And so I'm going to open it up, and again, I'm late, so I hopefully I'm not messing things up in whatever. And so my quick question is describing that maybe we need to talk in terms of outcomes for young people, that widgets go in, what comes out, putting more technical training and things of that nature besides what you're doing, or is it having a more robust education system that directs you into a job? Could we make it that easy? And do we need to like shock the system and make it like that? Mr. Bonta and I just came from Philadelphia, where Dr. William Barber talked about the heart of democracy, and that we need to be defibrillators to shock the heart, to get us to do what we need to do to save, in this case, in this context, to save America and to save the heart of America. Do we need to do things like that right now to really just shock? Because I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm tired of talking. And I'm now at a point, especially after coming from Philly, where I want to do some really drastic things, or just turn the whole thing upside down on its head, so that, and I'm a recovering bureaucrat, 25 years, so I have nothing against bureaucracies, but at some point, we're going to have to do something really drastic. And so, do you think we need to put a shock to the system to really get this going? Anyone? All right, now we're...
Yes. I think, again, my own personal experiences, I've worked in K-12, I've worked in higher ed, and now, and throughout that, it's been workforce development. You've got a continuum of shock that actually needs to happen. We need to look at early childhood education. We need to look at K-12. We need to look at what happened to the people who got lost in K-12. And so I think part of the question that we're looking at from REDF's perspective is that there are people who are, you know better than anyone the percentage of boys and men of color who are in the juvenile justice and the criminal justice system. We have to shock the system so that when these folks come out, they have viable futures for them. They have jobs that they can come to, but they can't just come in for a job. They need to have the supportive services and the education. When we were up in Sacramento yesterday, I think it was, with one of the graduates from the Civic Corps in Oakland, 21-year-old young man, grew up in Fresno, kind of bounces between Fresno and Oakland, because his mother's in Fresno, his father's in Oakland. And his ability to come back into the education system through Civic Corps to have a paying job while he went to school made his education viable. If he had been given a chance of only going to community college or only going to adult school and not being able to have a job, he wouldn't have been able to finish his education. So I think we need to look at education differently, and we need to look at it differently all the way from early childhood through adult, because we have not served our community well. So I think, yes, we need shocks, but it's not just one shock. We really have to look at it at the different points in the continuum where we can make a difference.
One thing I would add, building on that, is that the tail of this system needs to be, well, the end user is already in shock, which is industry. The industry is in a war for talent right now. They say they cannot find talent to meet the skill sets necessary to drive business forward. Now, one step ahead of that end user is a huge system that we put a lot of money into beyond the education system, which is our workforce development system. When we unpeel the workforce development outcomes in your own district, Representative Jones-Sawyer's, we can see that there's a number of young people that are being served, but not a huge percentage of those young people that are being placed in employment. We're spending millions and billions of dollars into the workforce development system without yielding the outcomes that industry needs to move forward. If we can get the tail end right, then we can get employers more upstream into the education system to participate in the ways that our superintendent wishes them to do so. But the reality is that they need talent today.
Yes, we need to shock the system, especially in regards to post-secondary education. Just speaking for us, I know that when we're looking at our general ed requirements and the courses that we take. Students come to our campuses, they're required to take, choose from almost like a menu from these different courses that they have to take. Yet when they're walking across stage to receive their degree, many of them still aren't walking across with the skills they need to secure gainful employment. And so by looking at those courses, by looking at what we're doing in education and really trying to flip things on its head in terms of preparing our students for the workforce of today and tomorrow, I think is extremely important. And we have to look at the rewards and how educational institutions are even recognized and honored. So we don't receive as much recognition for sending our students into the workforce and gaining gainful employment out of college as they do for research. That often goes into scholarly journals that only other individuals in the ivory towers are going to read. So how we assess and evaluate our colleges, our K through 12 institutions also needs to be reevaluated, and we have to not be afraid to step outside of the box and do something different and drastic. I think about even my own educational journey. I had to work full-time all the way through going to a community college and while going through school, and that wasn't necessarily admired or rewarded even through my own path, even though it allowed me to move forward and immediately after graduating from college secure employment in a field that I wanted to go into. The institutions where I attended didn't recognize that because there's more of a traditional path that we want to go, that they want their students to go through, because it ends up getting outcomes that they get rewarded for. And so I think it's something that we really have to take a look at, that we really have to acknowledge, and be willing to really step outside of the box, and bring student voices and voices of young people who are experiencing these, who often aren't at the table to engage in the conversations with us, so that they can partake in that and also give us their insight into what it is that they need and what their peers need in order to be successful when they leave our institutions.
Thank you. And I'll leave you with this. And Mr. Bonta, Mr. Torlakson knows this because the tech industry have come to us. Over the next 10 years, there'll be 2 million tech jobs, probably starting at what, $80,000 to $100,000 a year. Technically, for every African American, API, and Latino male, because there's not enough college seats in the state to fill all those jobs. So we almost could guarantee, as long as they get the education, we could guarantee them $100,000 a year job starting for the rest of their life. And so the point I'm making is, and the point you're making, the end goal is there. We just gotta feed the monster, and we can do it. that's why I asked, what do we need to do to shock it? Do we need to bring the tech people in to connect the kids so that they learn they have to do STEAM? Because STEAM will get them there. And I've told this to many constituents in my district, and you can literally see the mothers and the fathers kind of lean towards me and point to their little elementary school kid and said, sign him up right now. And so there's a lot of work to be done.
Totally.
Okay.
Totally agree, and I think the panel emphasized, Mr. Wallace used the word urgency.
Yes.
And you mentioned jump-starting or shocking the system, and those connections, while we're making some progress, it needs to be scaled, because $1.5 billion I mentioned earlier is being invested in career pathways and getting employers engaged and getting high school faculty, meeting with community college faculty, meeting with employers to figure out how to provide those pathways to the opportunities you just described. So I think the panel did really well at describing that. If you have additional ideas, it would be helpful to put them in writing and bring them to us if you have any other thoughts right now. But how to scale up some good work that is being done that has been effective.
Just one idea that we've been experimenting with over the last 2 years. Leaders Up was not just launched by Starbucks, but it was embedded to activate its supply chain. So Starbucks hires about 25,000 folks domestically annually. Its supply chain is a business network of 18,000 companies. So the challenge also to companies across California should be, how can we engage your supply chain? How can we inform your procurement processes? How do we embed community benefits programs into these processes so that we can all build a workforce together?
Thank you. And next, we'll have the third panel. And that's community-based programs. George Weaver, Brotherhood Crusade, Leticia Barajas, Los Angeles Trade Technical College, and Betty Hume, Asian American Advancing Justice.
May I, Mr. Chairman, to commend your work and leadership and Rob Bonta's work and leadership. I have a plane to catch. I hope one that will be on time. But I've been enlightened by the panel so far. Jasmine Ortega is my Southern California liaison living here in Los Angeles. She'll be reporting to me how this panel does. But I can't thank you enough for putting a spotlight on the need for our boys and men of color and bringing such wisdom together. So thank you.
And thank you for attending. This has been great.
And I just want to thank our California Superintendent of Public Instruction for being here. He's a true champion for children and for educators and for our public schools, and it means a lot that you're here personally for this conversation. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks. Thank you.
I'm going to have to slip out in a little bit as well.
Okay. Good. Okay. Mr. Weaver, would you like to begin?
Well, definitely. First of all, thank you, Chair Bonta. Thank you, Chair Jones-Sawyer, and thank you, Superintendent, for this opportunity to share. The room was silent as a 17-year-old African-American male attempted to share. His head moved once, his head moved twice, his head moved a third time as he gestured and opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The room of young men around him said, "It's okay, we got you, we got your back, it's okay." And he tried again. But the only utterance was, and nothing else. The encouragement continued, so he tried one more time, and this time he was able to share. My mother hates me. My mother thinks I'm a no-good person just like my father. All you do is gang bang, get arrested, get on drugs. You'll never be anything. But the thing my mother hates the worst is my sister thinks I'm her hero. My sister The person whom I'm always telling, F you, get out of here. Then she says, I love you. Be careful out there. Because deep down inside, she knew, and she always knows, I'm about to go do some dirt. One day, my sister walked into the room, and my partner and I were rolling a couple of J's. When she walked in, I said, get the F out of here, you ugly bitch. My sister ran out my room and ran out the house. 30 minutes later, we received a phone call. My sister had been raped. It was all my fault. As this young man shared his story, everyone jumped up and to comfort him and to help him understand. And he said, I've never shared this story with anyone. I don't know why I'm sharing it now, but I never told my sister I ever loved her. As the young men comforted him, he walked outside, and an hour later, he placed a phone call to his sister. And he says, I never told you this, but I love you. Good afternoon. My name is George Weaver. I'm with the Los Angeles Brotherhood Crusade. And on behalf of our president and CEO, Sharice Berman Weaver, I thank you for this opportunity to share about the lives of young people and how we can affect the transformation of these young people. On average, Brotherhood Crusade works with about 2,000 young men and boys of color annually. Of those, 500 we work with in an intensive role. Those intensive individuals are young men in the juvenile justice system, young people who are highly underperforming in school and referred by counseling, and young people who have quit life, out of school, out of work, not doing anything, but they've decided that, you know what, I'm gonna take one more chance, come back. Our years of experience have demonstrated that these young people are vacant a couple of things. And that the greatest thing that we can do to change the trajectory of their lives is address their unresolved issues of trauma. Moreover, the evidence is clear that the most effective interventions to reverse these life course trajectories is definitely addressing their unresolved issues of trauma, ensuring the presence of a caring adult who is persistently there, providing resources and opportunities for young men to develop their own capacity, what we call agency, and helping young people develop more positive peer groups. The last intervention is predicated on the first three, but it's definitely important. In fact, research shows that the most significant intervention for young people not to recidivate was changing their peer group. It even said that the other interventions that we've tried were ineffective. Given this data in concert with the evidence we've seen in our work, Brother Crusade developed a trauma-informed youth development mentoring program. This unique approach initiates with a process we refer to as self-actualization. The reality is that the self-actualization process is the entirety of Maslow's hierarchy. And so when we talk about that issue of ensuring that the needs of the young people are met first, it becomes real and the research supports it. You see, in order to change, we have to go through a change process. And so we have to start with changing the thinking. If you change the thinking, you change the attitude. You change your attitude, you change your beliefs. You change your beliefs, you start to change the behaviors. You change the behaviors, you change your actions. You change your actions, you change your habits. You change your habits, you change the results. Meeting the basic needs is the foundation of what Brotherhood Crusade does to take young people through this life course. As they go through this life course, they get the opportunity to develop the 5 areas of youth development: learning, thriving, leading, connecting, and working. Once they get through this and they have these issues of trauma that they've held so long addressed, they start to change everything. They get academic assistance, they get vocational training and job placement, they get primary and preventive health care, they get food, shelter, and clothing, they get numerous other assistance and resources to provide to them as they themselves are changing their thoughts, their mindsets, and aspiring to their own success. So what does all this mean? Well, the results are significant. 95% of the 14, 18-year-old black males enrolled in Brotherhood Crusades program who were in the juvenile justice system did not recidivate after 1 year. 94% who were in the system did not recidivate after 5 years. Compare that to the Los Angeles Probation Department's 83% recidivism rate for this same population. Okay? Equally as important, in the 2015-2016 school year, 93% of individuals who were off track to graduated. Over 174 young people who were off track to graduate either junior high school or high school graduated once they got into the program on time. So I share this. We think about the wise man who the young people wanted to prove wrong. And so they decided, you know what we're going to do? We're going to get a bird, and we're going to take that bird, and we're going to walk up to the wise man with the bird cuffed in our hands. And when we walk up to the wise man with the bird cuffed in our hands, we're going to ask him the simple question, is the bird alive or is the bird dead? If the wise man says dead, we'll open up and show him that the bird's alive. If the wise man says alive, we'll squeeze a little gently and show him if the bird is dead. When they went to the wise man and they asked the question, the wise man said, the answer is in your hands. We already know about all of the things that have been working for young men of color. Right now, the answer is in our hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver.
Greetings, I'm Leticia Barajas and I'm Vice President at LA Trade Tech College, just up the street. But I'm here today in my role as one of over 80 partners to tell you about the strategy we feel will help boys and men of color, which is our Slate Z strategy. Just last month, we were fortunate to be selected, with LA Trade Tech College being the lead, for our Promise Zone application, our South Los Angeles Transit Empowerment Zone. While my biography and the background was really stressing LA Trade Tech College, our strategy is really one where it takes a true community to really lift and collectively determine what are the strategies that can we best use collectively to really focus on increasing male student success rates. And we're really looking from pre-K all the way to the end of the career, because our primary goal is to transform and revitalize South Los Angeles. A little bit of background on Promise Zones. It's a HUD approach. You can only really identify a certain geographic area not to exceed 200,000. So we were very deliberate in the boundaries we chose, given our men of color and also our women of color, but given the diverse communities that we've historically and currently have in South Los Angeles. So we reached Crenshaw, Dorsey, all the way to Fremont, covering Jefferson, Santee, West Adams, Maya Angelou, Orthopedic High School, and all the areas, with Los Angeles Trade Tech College as one of the oldest LA community colleges in our district, with the college being the premier college for workforce development at the center. We've taken organizations that have, over the years, not necessarily historically worked with one another, but we've actually now combined to a coalition to really look at collectively how can we succeed. We have 5 goals, but one of our goals and the centerpiece of our goal would really be how do we transform our educational system. So we're doing a couple of creative things. Even before we were designated a Promise Zone, which has its benefits, that includes we can get priority funding or priority points on some competitive federal applications, and we get quite a bit of technical assistance for our geographic area. We've already committed to, number one, over the course of 10 years, 100% of our students attending our schools will graduate from high school and will be college ready. We've also adopted the notion that it's not either or, in terms of college or career, it's both. So we want to make sure in our communities we have the baseline of skilled workers to really work towards a train to place instead of a test to place strategy. We have a significant partnership with Metro, and we're inspired by the transit aspects of Metro and the expansion of our transit zones to really uplift the zones and uplift the community. So there are a couple of things and a couple of suggestions. Brotherhood Crusade is one of our partners, LA Urban League, the Coalition for Responsible Community Development, LAUSD, a number of elected partners, both at the city, the county, and at the congressional level. Our request is, number one, I'm sorry the superintendent had to leave, but over the course of the last 3 to 5 years, we've been fortunate in actually looking at very creative funding sources like the Career Pathway Trust Fund. However, some of these coalitions and some of these strategies take really time to create and to actually disseminate. Over the years, we've really collaboratively said, this is what we want to achieve. However, the current funding sources funds districts, not necessarily a cadre of partners who at a local level want to make significant change. Many changes, many interventions have already identified that are really locally been tested and locally succeeded. So our ask is to really consider in terms of really thinking of expanding those strategies or expanding applications to not necessarily make them district specific, but make them community or place based. So be a little more creative, or as you said earlier, the word you used in terms of just wreck it and start over and think very, very creatively and out the box. One aspect to consider is one of our goals is to very at an early stage not only expose but also provide a hands-on opportunity from kindergarten all the way to college degree completion to the multiple career aspects and career pathways. However, you may already know this, but just a reminder that community college don't get differentiated funding for career transfer education. We get the same amount of funding for operating an English class that only requires 4 walls, and we're operating welding, which requires quite a bit of instrumentation, technology, infrastructure, and just the cost of running a facility. So how do we lift our students up? How do we make our schools, our colleges more open at an earlier stage to make sure they're accessible to elementary school children, middle school children, and high school students? Where a good start was AB 288. We're very fortunate that we have that. However, who's going to cover the cost of textbooks? Who covers the cost of the instructional supplies? Who covers the cost of truly enabling our community members and our young men and women to really have the technology at their fingertips to be able to use it in a very creative way? So one thought is to really look at some models. We really feel that our Slate C strategy, although we just got designated as a promise zone, our goals are very ambitious, and we'll share with you. We'll make sure you have information on that. Our website, slatec.org, is very prominent, and we're coming up as a steering committee and really figuring out how do we scale this. Although our focus is the zone, targeting the 200,000 residents in South Los Angeles, our goal is to really transform all of South LA. But we wanted to hit the most critical points where our young men really focused and based on in terms of their high school experience. Hence the access points with these transformative high schools that are really coming into the college. So we look forward to really being part of that, and we hope that you are able to visit and really engage in some of the aspects, some of the strategies we have in mind. But it's not about one organization. It's not about trade tech strategy. It really is how do we all collectively work together and make it a very strength-based nonprofit, city, county, LA chamber activity to really lift an entire community. Thank you.
Thank you. Betty?
Good afternoon. Excuse me. My name is Betty Hung. I'm the Policy Director at Asian Americans Advancing Justice Los Angeles. And I want to thank both of the chairs, Assemblymember Jones-Sawyer and Assemblymember Bonta, for this opportunity. Advancing Justice LA, we were formerly known as the Asian Pacific American Legal Center, and were founded in 1983 by our president and executive director, Stuart Kuo. And along with our Bay Area affiliate, Advancing Justice Asian Law Caucus, have formed a partnership, Asian Americans Advancing Justice California, with a Sacramento office, spearheaded by Andrew Medina, which focuses on our statewide legislative work. So I'd like to focus today on just three things. First, to provide a sense of a context of our vision and values around racial justice and how that frames our education equity work. Second, Co-Chair Bonta mentioned earlier the importance of disaggregated data. So I just want to provide some highlights presenting disaggregated data to debunk the model minority myth with respect to Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. And third, I want to touch briefly as well on our recent formation of our College for All Coalition, which is a statewide, multiracial, cross-sector coalition of over 50 community organizations, faith, labor, civil rights groups that have come together around reinvestment in public higher education, looking at the pipeline from K through 12 through graduation, from college, and also, as you mentioned, really addressing the state's workforce and economic needs, knowing that according to the Public Policy Institute, by 2030, California will have an anticipated shortage of 1.1 million college graduates. So how do we ensure that, in particular, low-income students and underrepresented students of color really have equal opportunity and resources and support to succeed and graduate from college, from the state's four-year public universities in particular, and to get good living wage jobs? So first, starting with our racial justice framework for advancing justice, we have worked many years or in many decades with our Latino and African American partners, believing that the hallmark of our democracy is to ensure that everyone has equal opportunity, that there is justice, and that we work together, especially in California and in Los Angeles, which is one of the most diverse cities in the entire world, to ensure that no one is left behind. And that includes a long-standing commitment to racial justice and equity in education. For example, just to provide some historical context, in the 1990s, we led the statewide Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, I'm going to use the acronym ANHPI for short, a statewide ANHPI coalition against Proposition 209. And a majority of Asian American voters voted against Prop 209. I think that's really important to highlight. More recently, I just want to note that we are currently on the legal team led by Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, representing prospective and current Harvard students seeking to uphold affirmative action at Harvard. We also spearheaded the filing of 2 amicus briefs with Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander signatories in the Fisher 1 and 2 cases seeking to uphold affirmative action at the University of Texas, Austin. We filed those amicus briefs with the United States Supreme Court. And just 2 months ago, when we learned that some Asian American groups were going to file an administrative complaint against Brown, Dartmouth, and Yale with respect to affirmative action, we mobilized in 3 days over 150 ANHPI organizations across the country who signed on to our open letter strongly supporting race-conscious admissions in higher education, recognizing that, again, that diverse learning environments are important to all students, and including ANHPI students, and are crucial to ensuring that our leadership in our democracy are diverse. So in addition to this kind of policy and legal work, we also work on the ground with high school students of color. Annually, we reach about 3,000 high school students in LAUSD as well as in the San Gabriel Valley, including at Augustus Hawkins, which is in Co-Chair Jones-Sawyer's district. And these students are ANHPI, Latino, and African American. And that leads me to my second point, which is really around debunking the model minority myth. One of our student leaders, Min Dow, he actually gave me permission to share his story today. And I want to share it because it really highlights the human aspect of the kinds of systemic challenges that we see in terms of achievement gaps and opportunity gaps. So Min graduated from West Adams High School. He's first generation Vietnamese American, college going. His dad is 78, his mom is 68. He has an older brother who is mentally ill and has a disability. When Min graduated from West Adams, he went to Santa Monica College. And because he was struggling to also try to support his family, it took him 4 years to transfer to Cal State LA rather than the 2. And he used actually a lot of his financial aid because he was at SMSC longer than expected. And he now is one of our youth leaders contributing back to the community. He's a coordinator at the Asian American Resource Center at Cal State LA. But his experience is not an isolated one, and it really exemplifies that there are ANHPI students who face real needs and barriers, and that when the data are disaggregated, rather than treating ANHPI as a monolith, that's when we really see the real issues. And that's why we applaud Co-Chair Bonta for authoring AB 1726, which is co-sponsored by many of our friends, which is so important. So I just want to highlight, in the interest of time, a couple of statistics just to show why disaggregated data are so important. First, with respect to high school graduation rates, whereas the state average is 81%, if we again disaggregate the data, we see that Vietnamese, Laotian, Cambodian, Hmong, and Fijian students, or communities, all have lower high school graduation rates than the state average. With respect to A through G completion, whereas the state average is 42%, NHPI, Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders, generally at 37%, and Samoans, it's only 27% A through G completion. When we look at UC admissions, the state average is 62%, but yet Filipinos, Thai, Fijian, NHPI, Laotian, and Samoan students all have lower UC admission rates. And moreover, when we look at financial need and poverty, Hmong and Cambodian children have the highest poverty rates in California. And when we also examine UC system and Pell Grants, nearly half of Asian American students receive Pell Grants, including 94% of Hmong students, 64% of Vietnamese students, 54% of Korean students. So I just highlight these to just really emphasize the importance of disaggregated data. And Dr. Bishop mentioned earlier the importance of believing in every single student's potential and understanding every student. And so we would just urge that in really thinking about ANHPI students, that we also not assume that they're not struggling, and instead really look at each individual student and look at the disaggregated data. And third, and just briefly, I mentioned that we have formed a statewide multiracial cross-sector College for All coalition, really emphasizing the need to reinvest in public higher education, to expand enrollment slots, recognizing that we need more space for every eligible California student, but we also need to address the structural inequities when it comes to opportunity gaps and achievement gaps. And so this past year, this legislative session, we supported SB 1050, which was authored by the Senate President Pro Tem Kevin De Leon, and we really appreciated the Assembly's partnership and the Governor's partnership in enacting SB 1050 in the budget process. What it does, and Superintendent Torlakson mentioned or referred to it, this is landmark legislation that will build a pipeline of educational success and opportunity from K through 12 all the way through graduation from our state's four-year universities, in particular the UC, focusing on the highest need students at the highest need schools who are disproportionately students of color. It builds on the local control funding formula by one, allocating $200 million for K through 12 college readiness, focusing on students who are low-income English learners and foster youth to increase their access to things like AP classes, A through G courses, and it provides resources for professional development. Second, it expands UC enrollment slots by 2,500 slots for the 2017-2018 school year, which is a great step forward, but we believe that really needs to be much more to address that 1.1 million college graduate shortage we're anticipating by 2030. And third, it requires the UC to develop a plan and timeline to increase the admission, enrollment, and graduation of more students from the highest concentration LCFF schools, what we call within our coalition LCFF plus schools. So those are public high schools in California that have 75% or greater student enrollment of students who are low-income English learners and foster youth. Statewide, it's about 500 public high schools that are LCFF plus, about 620,000 students. 93% are students of color. 76% Latino, 8% African American, 9% ANHPI, 7% white. If we also look at it from a different perspective, 50% of Latino high school students are in these LCFF plus high schools, 41% of African American students, 24% of ANHPI students, and 8% of white students are in these highest need high schools. So the UC will now be required to increase the admission, enrollment, and graduation of more students from these schools, LCFF plus high schools, which we believe will rightfully and appropriately result in increased diversity. Co-Chair Jones-Sawyer, there are 29 LCFF plus high schools in your district, and Co-Chair Bonta, there are 20 LCFF plus high schools in your district. So, and in addition, finally, there's $20 million for UC to support student services for low-income and underrepresented students of color. So we really look forward, as we focus on the implementation phase of this, to ensure that at the end of the day, low-income and underrepresented students of color have the support and resources necessary, and really the fair chance, right? An equal opportunity and a fair shot at succeeding and graduating from our state's public university. We really look forward to partnering with all of you to make this a reality.
Mr. Bonta is going to ask a quick question, and maybe you can do his closing comments, because then right after this we have to public comments before they kick us out.
Great, thank you. I just want to thank this panel for your contributions, and I wanted to ask a question because this is fresh on my mind from being in Philadelphia with Chair Jones-Sawyer. We were there for the Democratic National Convention, and part of what was discussed was the Democratic Party's platform, which some states have already been working on. We've been working on this issue, but one of the top issues for access to higher education and success for our young people has been this concept of providing tuition-free higher education. And obviously it got a lot of traction, and there's a lot of excitement around it behind one of the presidential candidates' campaigns, and then it became adopted more broadly in the Democratic Party's platform. Do you think that that is enough or the right focus for our boys and men of color? Is it access by reducing cost, or is it more about recruitment, retention, support once in a higher educational system, other pathways like CTE, career tech ed, just some reflections on that, because I think a lot of people are talking about this issue as sort of a panacea and a cure-all for what we need in this nation, and I think it is important, no doubt about it. It's popular and populist and can help a lot of young people who are facing steep debt if they go to a higher educational institution. But is that the focus or not quite for BMOC?
So I think it's a great start. However, most of our students qualify, at least at the community college level, for a Board of Governors grant. So that's for about 75% of students already going to trade tech. That's not necessarily a significant incentive. First of all, it should not be about a first-year experience or what we all call a promise. It should be about a completion promise and what it takes to get there, which is first aid guaranteed, regardless of where your financial aid application is, guaranteed textbooks, guaranteed being able to have access to the instructional materials you need to be successful in the course you need. So I think it's a great start. However, most of the issues our students have is that they don't have enough money to actually go and eat or actually provide for the necessities, paying rent or childcare. The challenge is where we make them wait, given our financial aid time, the system, the timeline like it takes, or even some bars to actually receiving financial aid. So I would really argue that, or really urge us to consider that we really think about packaging the support, but making it throughout the college experience for a completion agenda, not for a first-year success agenda.
So I'd like us to think about a statistic that's just recently released, and that is in the state of California, 1/3 of entering ninth graders do not graduate high school. 1/3 of entering ninth graders graduate, but do not have the skills to either get a job or go to post-secondary school. So 66% of the students, even with that incentive, aren't ready for that, right? In South Los Angeles, that number is 85%. So when we think about the analogy of the rose, and you know, sunlight is necessary to help a rose grow. But before the sunlight before you need the sunlight, you first need to de-weed the soil. You first need to fertilize the soil. You need to make sure the seed is planted well, and you need to water the seed. Then it's time for the sun to come in. The incentive is the sun. But as Assembly Member Jones-Sawyer noted outside with the young person, I got to eat first. And these are the challenges that these young people, the notion of thinking about school is far removed from where they are currently. If we don't address those needs first, if we don't help them to then also aspire to the desire to go to school, the incentive doesn't matter because they're not looking at it. It's not even a thought in their process. And so it's a great, great, great thing. However, we got to do the groundwork first to make sure that our young people are prepared to receive that blessing.
Yeah, just to build on both of those comments, I think we really have to look at it in terms of an overall pipeline from early childhood education all the way through completion from college as well as the workforce. And because of the structural inequities, we know that low income and communities of color have less access at every step. And so unless we ensure that there is more equity in early childhood education, in college readiness, K through 12, you know, schools that have higher percentages of students who are low income English learners and foster youth have less access to A through G classes, AP classes, and that's why the LCFF is so important, but we need to make sure that that gets down to the school level. And then in terms of college readiness, and then we have to address implicit bias. You know, we hear so many stories from the youth. Actually, at our office today, we had high school youth leaders who are a part of our immigrant youth justice program, and they talk about how counselors tell them, well, no, actually, you should go to a Cal State, not UC, or actually, you should go to community college first. And that kind of tracking an implicit bias that we know disproportionately affects students, you know, of color. I think we have to address that as well and ensure equity of access to classes, other college readiness resources. And then in the admissions process, we have to also make sure that there is fairness. And that students have a fair shot, and you know that includes things like part of what SB 1050 does, as enacted through the budget, is it requires the UC to analyze the costs and benefits of providing fee application waivers for students from LCFF plus schools. And so things like that are really important, I think, in addition to making college more affordable. And then we have to expand the slots. You know, we appreciate all the discussion within the state legislature about out-of-state enrollment compared to California resident students and how that's had a disproportionately negative impact on, you know, underrepresented students of color. And so the more that we can expand the pie of educational opportunity by expanding enrollment slots in a significant way, but we have to make sure that there's equity and that we build a pipeline so more low-income and underrepresented students of color are college-ready, college-eligible, and have a fair shot at some of those slots.
Thank you. I really appreciate your responses and reflections. I just want to take this opportunity to thank you as panelists in this panel and all of our panelists for all the panels today for the work that you've done, that you're doing, that you will continue to do on behalf of our boys and men of color. Thank you for your love you've shown for our community of boys and men of color and the commitment you've shown to them. Clearly, after today's discussion, we have more work to do. We're on the right track in many ways, but a lot more work to do, and I look forward to doing that work with you. Thank you to my chair for his great leadership and work. I need to excuse myself at this time, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here with all of you today. Thank you.
Can you hear me out there? No. Oh, can you hear me out there now? Okay. So I also want to thank Chairman Bonta for coming down here and being here. We've been an incredible team working on all these issues, but I also want to make sure he catches his plane, and I wish him luck with Southwest Airlines and getting there. My staff is fidgeting out there, so I don't know if that means we don't have any time we have no time. 5 minutes. Okay, I got 5 minutes for any public comment. And 2 minutes, 3 minutes, it's getting shorter. 3. That means a minute apiece. So if you're with a group, one designated person come up. Yes.
And I am with LA's Best, and I would really want to see the expanded learning field represented among the partners. We offer a lot of the kinds of programming that you're talking about. LA's, we serve over 25,000 kids. Throughout the state of California, expanded learning serves over 800,000 kids daily, and we do this work. We've already been proven that our kids are less likely to drop out of school, score higher grades, are more likely to gain those skills that they need, like conflict resolution, like building that social capital that they need for the workforce later on. So in the Sacramento panel, invite a partner from the expanded learning field to present. Yeah?
Yes. Got it. Understood. Thank you. I work for Dick Reardon, so I really do LA's Best. Yes. Yes, young man. Or young man. Or young man.
So my name is Krishan Day. I'm the youth organizer for the Social Justice Learning Institute from Inglewood, California. I'm currently 22 years old. I do not believe that the education system is addressing the needs of boys and men of color. Me going through this experience, I went to Weems Elementary School, I went to Gompers Middle School, I even went to high school in Inglewood, California, and I went to Chico State for the past 4 years. My major is political science, legal studies, and throughout my experience, I have not seen improvement amongst my fellow peers of black men getting into college and actually succeeding through their experiences there in college, even as well as for my younger brothers who is currently in the K-12 education system. I feel like the K-12 education system needs to focus more on cultural education to help get a better knowledge and understanding of all the folks that's coming to America in this education system, as well as learning ways to help break up this division between blacks and brown folks in the education system. I feel like that's one way it could be addressed through that. Also, I feel like if you want to address the education system, you first need to bring more youth to the table and have more youth to be a part of this selected committee. As I looked around the room, I only see myself, my fellow alumni of my organization, this young man, and a couple other folk here in this conversation. So if that's something you all want to address and make sure you get done, invite more young folk to this conversation, and then we'll have a better conversation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, young man.
I'm Rodrigo Martinez Campo. I'm an active youth organizer at the Labor Community Strategy Center and a current member of the Brother Son Self Coalition. I'm here to talk about my school environment. I attend Venice High School, and in my school, many students feel criminalized by the school police rather than protected. And in my school, they also don't know what restorative justice is. And I'm one of the youth that actually fought to start restorative justice in my school system. And now, today, there's the school, LAUSD has a $70 million budget on school police and $10 million budget on restorative justice. To me, this shows that my school district, LAUSD, prioritizes school police rather than student graduation rates going up. And at the end of the school year, the Labor Community Strategy Center fought LAUSD for receiving 1 MRAP tank, 3 grenade launchers, and 61 M16 rifles. They returned them and apologized. But why was this even a fight? I need a legislation and policies that directly combat the criminalization of the youth. We need money for social services, restorative justice counselors, and teachers. This would make me feel safe in my school environment, and I believe we could find that money in the school police budget. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And we are addressing that, the legislature. And I absolutely do agree with both of you young men. We need to bring the people who are, I'll break it down in the business sense. You are our customers, the young people. You need to tell us what you need to be successful instead of us telling you what you need to do to be successful. So I appreciate what you said today, and I will ensure that our colleagues include you in our discussion as we move forward. And so with that, I am going to gavel down since I am the Lone Ranger here. But for those of you who've come here today, I guarantee you, because we're taping this, but more importantly, we'll do the transcripts, we will follow up and move forward with many of the suggestions and ideas that have come out of this hearing. It's very, very important. Our committee, more than any other, I believe, actually try to do some substantive legislation, some budget recommendations, or just try to do some organizational structure things so that we are able to affect and impact our boys and men of color in a positive way. So again, I want to thank you for being here, and have a good afternoon and a good weekend. Hey, now we're talking.